This podcast is brought to you by Micro Center. Get $25 off purchases of over $100 through a link in the description, and also shop their back to school sales and get early access to Micro Center Miami. And then it is also brought to you by VRAM, and use offer code Broken Silicon to save 10% on tasty ramen and other great products that they sell. We'll talk about these sponsors more later, but for now, let's just get on with the show. Welcome to Broken Silicon, a gaming hardware podcast. I am your host, two-tailed, messed-up arm Tom, and today I am joined by my co-host,
three-limbed, deformed CPU AI image Dan. Three-limbed Raptor AI.
Three-armed. I'm looking at it now. Yeah, right before we decided to start doing the podcast today, we downloaded that AMD Amuse AI program that AMD released with Strix, and did it do as well or worse than I expected? I would actually say it did a little better than I expected. My expectations for a non-mid-journey AI are just so low. Like, we'll put these on screen here. Like, all I said is a Raptor running next to a lake, and it had two tails, and one of its arms was like a squiggly and tiny. And well, Dan, what was your search term for the Raptor?
I did a Velociraptor doing a kickflip off of a CPU. So a more abstract or a stranger request, I suppose. So maybe that threw it off a little bit.
But definitely the type of request I would expect you to have typed. And yeah, it doesn't seem to know what a CPU is. It kind of just looks like a vacuum robot to me. A Roomba, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if I saw that in the distance, I would say that's a lawn mowing or vacuuming robot right there, not a CPU that's, what is it, like 2 by 2 feet and 5 inches thick.
I was hoping for a more realistic CPU, and I was hoping for a cooler kickflip, because this one kind of just looks like it's using it as a trampoline, but
or it kind of just looks like someone copy and pasted a Raptor like in the sky. It actually just seems like it's standing in midair to me. But yeah, so I guess that was a goofy way I decided to open up this podcast here. And I would say that probably needs a little more work before that seems useful by me for anything. But how are you doing, Dan?
I'm pretty good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. Fine, solid 6 out of 10 day, I'd say so far. So let's see. Compared to some of the days we've had to deal with this year, I'd take it. Yeah. QH Freddy writes in and says, there hasn't been much reader mail lately making fun of Tom's pronunciation of non-English names. So does anyone want to talk about how Tom says Chris Rich rather than Chris? I'm not going to try to say it now that he says it's wrong. And I'm not going to try to pronounce how you probably say greetings in Dutch either, from the Netherlands. You know what, QH Freddy? What's going on is people have realized that resistance is futile, and that this Midwestern boy will say things however he wants. Although, to be fair, I have to say this again. When the Bergamo thing broke my brain, because I had people from different parts of Italy pronouncing it differently, and I'm like, and then Lisa Sue went on stage and was just like Bergamo in like an American accent, and I'm like, and that's how the CEO is saying it, so I don't want to hear it anymore. Bergamo. Enough. We're trying our best here at Moore's Law instead.
And if we're talking about goofy languages with weird spellings, I mean, Dutch, come on. The Netherlands is just like, what if we made English and made all of the words funny?
Well, yeah, a way I like to put it with Dutch is with like English, it typically chooses like French for a lot of the nouns, and then German for a lot of the grammar, and they'll just randomly pick French or German or sometimes Scandinavian words for the roots all over the place. But with Dutch, they're like, what if we just did both German and French and made the word twice as long? I mean, remember when I landed in Amsterdam once, I was just looking at the signs in the airport, and all the words were just, oh my God.
Love the Netherlands, though.
But we love the Netherlands, so, certainly not making fun of you. So don't make fun of me, QH Freddy. Moving on to a correction here. Daniel Hyde, Caden Computers CEO, writes, and it says, not necessarily a correction, but a broken Silicon 266 when talking about games using more than 8 gigabytes of RAM. The use in Hogwarts Legacy is a specific example. I found that almost anyone I've spoken to about that game is happy as long as they can play it. No one ever seems to mention quality to me. My wife plays on Steam Deck. Her mom plays on the Switch. I asked my wife how bad it looked on her mom's Switch, and she said it looked fine. I think what I'm saying is that it depends on the game and people care about what it looks like. But yeah, but sure. But I'm going to say my girlfriend, when she was playing, like she went from playing Hogwarts Legacy on a mini PC that just had Rembrandt in it at first, and then she went to one that now has a 6600 and a Rembrandt CPU to power it. And she can tell the difference between what was like 1080p, kind of 60 to 1440p ultra locked 60. And she's seen the Switch version of Hogwarts, and she said, honestly, I wouldn't have wanted to play it. And she doesn't play the Zelda games as much sometimes because in some areas it gets 20 frames per second and it bothers her. So I don't know. Obviously, it's in the eye of the beholder, but I do think we have to acknowledge here that like once you get down to Switch at this point, even casual gamers a lot of the times are having issues these days.
Well, yeah, and it's more just an illustrative example of how a new game is using over 8 gigabytes, even in not that intense scenarios. Like, yeah, I mean, I get that Hogwarts Legacy is more likely to attract casual gamers because it's attached to a huge IP. So a bunch of non-gamers are more casual gamers are going to get into video games because of it.
Yeah. And one thing I just want to bring up again, because I don't think it's brought up enough when it comes to RAM, is a thing that blew me away is on that Minis Forum Rembrandt system. It had 16 gigabytes of RAM. I put 32 gigabytes in it, and performance just jumped up to like 20, 30% at the same settings, even though it said it was only allocating like 15 gigabytes. It was very clear that even on something as weak as like, what would that be, like an RX 6400, that like, man, it more than 8 gigabyte, more than 16 gigabytes total, meaning more than like 60. I mean, you really need like 24 gigabyte system and I don't know, 12 gigabytes VRAM at this point combined for like anything to run stably unless you're in 720p. And just think that's worth reminding people that it still isn't even enough for something that weak, or it could benefit, I should say, from more.
Yeah, I mean, and I think maybe if like 1080 people that game on 1080p will eventually even want to have like 8 gigs. I mean, not like 12 gigs of RAM. And that's it.
Yeah, definitely. Well, anyways, I guess let's just move on to the first story right here. Speaking of restricting how much RAM you can have in a system, we must now talk about what is really the main story of today's episode with story number 1. AMD Zen 5 Strix gets its first reviews. First quoting from Notebook Check and then just kind of working through all of the information. Our test sample, this is Notebook Check, of the ZenBook S16 is the faster of the two available models and is equipped with the new 12-core AMD Ryzen AI HX 370 alongside its integrated Radeon 16 compute unit 890M graphics with 32 gigabytes of RAM of LPDDR5 X7500 and a 1 terabyte SSD. And, well, the new AMD Zen 5 processor has made a great first impression, especially when it comes to CPU performance. Despite its low power limits of 33 or 28 watts, depending on what settings you choose, the ZenBook S16 can compete with Intel CPUs, which use substantially more energy. And this is definitely true when you look across reviews. In fact, the 28-watt laptops most reviewers were provided could often beat Phoenix, Meteor Lake, and the X8 laptops operating at double the power. However, on the note of power, it's fairly obvious that Strix really does need more power to fully leverage the potential multi-threading uplift one would expect from going from 8 to 12 cores. Kit Guru, for example, showed that a desktop Phoenix chip can beat a 28-watt Strix chip in multi-threading if provided substantially more power, which doesn't look good. Also, in single threading, the uplift was not that substantial either in general. However, in gaming, with the integrated graphics, the situation is very different, as AMD is competing purely with itself in this department at this point. Well, the advantage for the 890M is sometimes only 20% or even occasionally single digits better than Phoenix or Meteor Lake when the latter competitors are running at double the power. Once every system is constrained to around 30 watts, Strix often pulls ahead by around 40 to 60%, which is truly outstanding. But that does get us to a point here. Well, dedicated GPUs like the laptop 3056 gigabyte are often 30 to 50% stronger than Strix. Those GPUs are often consuming 2 to 3 times the power of the lone Strix APU at 28 watts. So one really has to wonder how Strix would perform at 54 watts with faster RAM against the 3050, considering it can currently trounce Hotpoint performance at half the power. Furthermore, multiple reviewers spoke of some apps don't even have software support yet. Like they can't even boot them. And AMD says new drivers are on the way. So one must also probably remember that RDNA 3.5 is a new architecture and wonder if this could have used some more time in the oven. As for battery life, of course, laptop battery life depends a lot on the platform, the software, and the configuration. But when normalizing tests like for like Notebook Check did, Strixbook shows very competitive battery life even with the lauded X Elite, offering close enough battery life across scenarios while offering more performance within that battery life. However, it did not really take the lead, at least in this writer's opinion. Oh, and I have a small little leak today. It is just one source that's gotten back to me so far. But so far, I am told that day one sales are absolutely insane. One person I spoke to at a major retailer in the United States said that this is the biggest laptop volume and successful launch they have seen in their lifetime, beating out the volume and the amount of laptops sold for Apple launches that they've seen for many years now. In fact, half of the models at their location are sold out. There's massive amounts of back orders being placed, and this thing is selling like hotcakes, at least according to this one person I've spoken to. I'm sure I'll speak to many more people soon. All right, Dan, what do you think of Strix?
I think I knew it was going to be a weird launch because it's launching on a Sunday. Part of me was a little worried at first that, and you said this isn't going to be the case, but part of me was worried that like releasing this news on a Sunday might mean it's not as good as people were expecting it to be. But yeah, I don't know. I think it mostly exceeded expectations. There's a few bad things about it that need to be addressed. That like there's the fact that, as you said, there's no you can't expand the memory on the system, which I don't know, seems to just be a thing that partners don't want anymore because, now they can sell you expensive, overpriced RAM because every manufacturer.
Yeah, Crafts wrote in and said that all laptop platforms for 2024 now seem to have soldered RAM as a requirement.
Yeah, I know. It's really unfortunate. It's not great for the consumer, but Intel's doing it, Qualcomm's doing it, Apple's always done it. But just as far as performance goes, yeah, obviously this thing is great. And at this point, I don't know. It's almost like they're just doing laps around themselves now. Yeah,
I'm of two minds about Strix. I can't help but feel like the CPU performance is disappointing me. Actually, quite a bit in some apps. But at the same time, and this I'd say is like AMD's fault. I don't really understand why they only supplied 28 watts, it seems, models, as far as I've seen, of Strix, when this is a 12-core Zen 5 APU. I want to see what 12 cores can do with 45 watts, because I'm going to be honest with you, I would want a 45-watt laptop if it had the 12-core model of Strix, and were to go to the 10-core model, I would argue you might. Should be only what you're using for 28 watts.
Yeah, there's two possible interpretations of that, I guess. It could either be 28 watts is where its performance is ideal and it doesn't scale well past all the way up to 50, which would be surprising. Or they wanted the headlines, this new CPU beats its competitors at half the power usage, which is, what they got.
That is true. Maybe that is what they were trying to brag about.
That would be my guess, is they're trying to sell you on the efficiency of it, because they brought 50-watt performance to 28 watts.
Well, it is crazy, too. Like, I'm looking at the AnandTech review, and you can see in all of these games here, like the Ryzen 8700G, which I believe is actually Hotpoint, running at 65 watts. Like, let's see here, in Warhammer, it loses by, was it over 10% to a 28-watt Strix? I mean, that's less than half the power. In Returnal, it's crazy. I mean, it went, I think Strix at 28 watts, beats the 8700G at 65 watts by like, what is this, 40%? And that's shocking efficiency. And so it's really weird. I can't help but think that this needs some new drivers, though, because I don't understand how they've managed to make the graphics perform that well at that low power. I mean, maybe this is the sweet spot for the graphics, and that's what they were looking for too, because it might be bottlenecked in a lot of games. If if you give it more power, it doesn't matter, it doesn't have enough bandwidth. I don't know, but I don't know. I've seen some people reporting that too, that there is something maybe odd going on with smart shift between the CPU and the GPU, which actually would explain why the GPU is going bonkers and the CPU isn't getting much of an uplift in some reviews.
Oh, that is interesting. I mean, there's definitely a software surprise. AMD launches something and it initially has software issues that need to be ironed out. And I think AMD really needs to get better about launching things when they're fully cooked. Like, this needed probably another few weeks of development to actually get it to where it doesn't kind of feel like it's a beta launch, which is what they always do. But
Carrie No Sugata writes in and says, my impressions of Strix Point from the reviews so far are that Strix shows a lot of promise and it looks to be the best Windows laptop CPU available right now, but also seems to need a few more months of optimizations to really shine, like, I don't know, all laptop CPUs need these days. Also, power efficiency looks good, but battery life tests might as well be random. There's very little consistency between reviewers. I actually did notice that too, that some reviewers, it like almost looked worse than Meteor Lake somehow. And then one review, they were just like, it beats everything by flying colors. I don't know.
Yeah. Were they all reviewing the same model too? Like, I'm just like I just don't remember if it was all the same model. Because if it's the same model, then that's really bad, and that points to some weird inconsistency in their software. That's all I could imagine it being. But yeah, once again, that just all points to their software being a bit undercooked on this release, and they could have done so much better if they had just, actually waited for it and had a, completely positive press cycle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm of two minds about it. It seems like they just want to push it out so they can get updates and then prepare their models that are going to launch in 4 months with all these tweaks. Like, that's what OEMs tend to, I think, want them to do as well. And they're just like, hey, it's inevitable. This is always what happens. But at a minimum, I have to say, no, they should have had 54-watt models being reviewed. I mean, I'm seeing them for sale at Best Buy. So why did not more people get the truly flagship ones? There should be more of those. On day one, so you get that apples to apples, like show the 12 core crushing everything. Because I saw some people mess with power, and in some benchmarks, it does just start to just lead everything by a lot in CPU performance and multi-threading once you do that. But then I also think I saw multiple reviewers, I think it was Kit Guru said this, I think Linus Tech Tip said this, that they just can't run some of the AI apps they have, like mainstream ones. And I'm like, well, it has AI in the name, AMD. Like, delay it a couple of weeks at least for that.
Yeah, that's insanely stupid to me. I'm also curious, how are like the 54 watt versus like 28 watt laptops being advertised? Because Linus pointed out in his video, at least in the press release, that they're removing like the UHS-HX designations for their CPUs. I mean, for these APUs, which is not good. I don't like them doing that.
There's still a degree of like, what Phoenix laptop do you have? What is it? Is it 7945HS?
Yes.
Right. And yours goes to 45 watts. I believe mine is an 8040U. So yeah, that's 28 watts. So that tells you something. But there are some versions of mine that are at like 30. There are some versions of mine limited to 18. Same with yours. So there was always some ambiguity around it. You already had to look that up before. But yes, now, whether it's 15 watts or 54 watts, you don't really know.
Yeah. So I hope they're putting that into the branding somehow. But, I think it needs to be pointed out. We criticized Nvidia for doing that. Now AMD's
removing Max Q, which I really liked that.
Yeah, now AMD's kind of taking a page out of that playbook, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah, the only thing I will say, and this isn't really in defense of AMD, just like an FYI for everybody listening, is in preparation while writing the notes for this episode, I wanted to make sure I knew what the TDP was of like actually like the Intel or Qualcomm ones being compared in some of the reviews. And if I just typed in like Dell XPS model number, it always told me right away. Like Google would just say 28 right there. So I think typically you can find it fast.
Yeah,
is what I would say, but you do have to check.
I don't like. I just don't like seeing that in general. I mean, I get that it's really not that hard to check at this point, but don't make it harder for to be informed on what a product is. That's generally bad.
And so just generally speaking on Strix, I don't know how I would summarize my opinion, because the funny thing is it's just like, it seems like single core is a bit constrained by the clock speeds not going up. And the fact that I believe the Zen 5 variant that is used in Strix doesn't have full AVX 512 and a couple other things, that kind of makes its real IPC increase seemingly more like 10% instead of 16%, right? Mm-hmm. But at the same time, it's like, it's still the best APU. I mean, AMD, it's not in some ways as impressive as we wanted, but in other ways, like low power, or should I say around 28 watt gaming, integrated graphics performance, wildly faster than the predecessor. So that's actually a surprise to me. I didn't expect that, or at least not to that degree. But, you know, even though it's kind of a mixed bag, it is the best one, right? I mean, and there's really that's just still true.
Yeah, I mean, this is to compare it to another launch, this is a far better launch than the semi-disastrous Qualcomm launch, where they kind of revealed that, oh, yeah, it doesn't work in half the games and us telling you that it was going to be this great gaming device is all kind of BS.
And the Meteor Lake launch that just, I mean, we don't need to rehash that. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, if I look at this, I mean, what else is there to say? I'm looking at integrated graphics. I mean, it typically beats everything by about 20%, but then you'll randomly get a game where it's like frickin' 50% while using half the power. If you look at like CPU performance here, let's see. I mean, it doesn't always win everything, but generally speaking, it's chart topping, and it does have the fastest NPU. So I don't know. I mean, the way I'd put it is, will it give you a longer battery life than Qualcomm? Honestly, no. Like it
sounds like
I think we need more reviews. That's why I say first reviews for the title of this. I think we need more reviews, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, but that whole time you were using it, you were getting a 24 thread processor that can like truly power anything you want. Like, it has a dedicated graphics card. So the battery life might not be better than Qualcomm, and in some instances a little worse, but you're getting such a better performing product. Like, you'd still be silly to choose the other one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, AMD just launched the best APU. It is the best. It's kind of the only one we can recommend at a certain point here. But at the same time, I think there could be an opening for Lunar Lake.
Oh yeah, definitely.
I definitely do now. I mean, look, I think we'll see what happens with multi-threading there, but in single threading, it does seem like Lunar Lake's going to win that. And in dedicated, well, not dedicated, but like, you know, in terms of trying to play like a dedicated graphics card, as long as Intel's drivers are good, I think they could finally have like kind of the type of laptop I would actually want. Although, actually, if I had to choose, I'd be up in the air if I really want 12 cores. I actually probably would for my work. But, you know, I think there's definitely an opening here for Lunar Lake.
Yeah, there is. I mean, Lunar Lake has to deliver and deliver well on a lot of its promises, but Intel is making those promises, so we'll see if they keep them.
Yeah, the only other thing I'd add is I don't know how fast, if this is going to make sense with how many generations they have coming out and how many APUs they have getting ready to launch next year, but you got to wonder if there's a Hawkpoint situation here. I smell Phoenix. I smell a Phoenix situation where it's like, it is the best, but we kind of expected Phoenix to be more efficient than it was, and then Hawkpoint comes out and it just fixes it. I could see that being a thing with Strix in like Q2 next year, like something else. I saw there were rumors of something I thought called like Bald Eagle Point or something. I don't know. Oh, yeah, could you imagine the thumbnails for that if that's true?
Oh, there's going to be so many American flag and bald eagle emojis.
All righty, let me move on here. QH Freddy writes in, and he says, why is AMD struggling so much with what to call their C-core variants? Only in the press days the other week, they were referred to as cloud cores, compact cores, and economy cores interchangeably. And I'm pretty sure there's a slip of the tongue there where they accidentally said efficiency cores too. I don't know. I'm actually going to be a contrarian here and go, I think it's because it's genuinely hard to come up with how to market these cores. Like, they are not E-cores, but they are kind of lower performance. But actually, only sometimes in some TDP scenarios, they actually would outperform a P core. So that is why I've advocated that if I worked at AMD, I'd be telling them, call them compact cores when you need to talk about them. And otherwise, don't bring them up. Because when you look at Intel throttling, they throttle down to 2 gigahertz anyways. It's not like they're really any faster clocked if you're pushing it to the TDP limit for extended periods compared to what AMD's doing here. So yeah, I'd call them compact cores because that's what they are. They're not little, they're compact. And I just wouldn't bring it up a lot.
Or we could go with the logic of QH Freddy's economy cores and call the big cores business class cores, Tom.
Business class cores and economy cores?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a way to do it. I could see the marketing, like, joking aside, they just call them extreme cores and ultra cores. You can see that. These are the premium cores and these are the elite cores, but these ones are still premium.
You're going to like gaming with these C cores.
Mm-hmm. Sorry about there's being no leg room. All right, now let us move on then to another story here. Story number 2. AMD Ryzen AI HX 375 with a 55 top NPU breaks cover. Going from Tom's Hardware, more details about AMD's Ryzen AI Strix point CPUs have been coming to light over the past few weeks. And today we got official confirmation of a third Ryzen AI 9 300 series CPU, the AI 9 HX 375, to join the Ryzen AI 9 the 370 and the 365. Yeah. The main difference between them seems to just be the NPU, with a slightly amped up NPU that has 5 more TOPS throughput to throw towards AI tasks. We have seen AMD make special SKUs for specific OEMs in the past. Yeah, I mean, I believe there was the 4900 HS was a timed exclusive or exclusive with Asus back when Renoir was out. And it says, given that the only thing that's different between the 375 and 370 is 5 extra TOPS, it seems that desire to pip competitors, even if meaningless ways, has turned to AI performance. Is 5 TOPS significant? Not that much, but I guess HP can market their laptops as being the fastest on earth at AI for a while. So I don't know. I thought we'd mention this, because this could lead to a more interesting discussion too. But I'm sorry, what did you think about this?
Oh, I mean, not that much. Like, obviously, there's no new hardware. They just overclocked the neural NPU on a 370 10%. So that just suggests to me that, yeah, this is what AMD is going to have to offer for a while when it comes to APUs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I was thinking of putting a leak into this one. We'll see if I decide to have a quote slide, throw it up at the last minute before I send the files to Gerard to edit it. But I think one thing that's interesting here, and things that I've heard whispered about from OEMs, is that when Intel says that Lunar Lake is 48 TOPS, and then you look at their lineup, and some of them allegedly will go down to 40 TOPS, and yet AMD is just 50 for everything, and then now there's a special edition 55. I've heard OEMs suggest to me that the TOPS performance in AMD's APU is much more real. Like that Intel intended Lunar Lake to have a 40 TOPS NPU, and then at the last minute tried to overclock it to 50 and failed to hit 50, even with pushing it as hard as they could, only for some of the yields. And so that in long term, I don't know how these NPUs will ever really be used. Maybe they won't. I know a lot of people are skeptical, but let's say there are some language models or things you're running with this long term in the background at all times, and you're if you plug it in, it actually is running consistently, trying to push that NPU. I've heard that AMD is more likely going to be boosting to whatever clock speed would be around 45 to 50 most of the time. And that Intel might just be throttling down to 40 and barely clinging there most of the time as well. That really can only boost to 48 TOPS on some models. AMD can boost much closer to 50 at a sustained level for a long time. And I think this 55 TOPS version coming out kind of proves it too, that in fact they actually have even better yields than they were letting on.
Yeah, I mean, no, that's probably not the case. I don't know if the rest of the parts on this would just be bin better too, so it might just be a slightly better version of the APU that you're getting in general.
No, that is what it is, but that's what I'm saying. This proves if AMD can launch a 55 TOPS one, that the 50 is real, and that if Intel is binning between 40 and 48, that in sustained workloads on the NPU, it's probably going to be throttling down to 40 much of the time.
Yeah.
And actually, now that I'm thinking about it, this channel leaked that Strix Point uses 3 nanometer for the IO die. I bet it's just a 3 nanometer die shrink of what's in Strix, because the rumors I've heard is that it's 60 to 70 tops. Yeah, it's probably just running faster because it's a better node, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's more evidence of that as well, which is interesting. All right. Well, you know, if you want a new AMD laptop or to replace a broken CPU, you should do it at the sponsor of this podcast, Micro Center. New customers get $25 off purchases of $100 or more right now. Click on the link in the description. Anything you buy right now, you can just get $25 off. That's addition to the ridiculous deals where they're like giving you 32 gigabytes of RAM for free. They also have the latest deals for back to school on a link in the description, and their back to school link as well. And you can sign up for early access to Micro Center Miami. The Charlotte one is fully open. They're opening one in Miami. Yes, I'm hearing rumors that they're looking at doing more. Micro Center is expanding a lot, so I think that's very exciting. And they're usually giving away USBs and stuff when you check out their new store for free as well. So I do think it is worth checking out that new store for fun as you go to the Church of PC Hardware, maybe on a Sunday or something. But yeah, I don't know if I have much else to say about it, Dan. I mean, I don't know what I expect you to say here, but Dan like Micro Center?
Dan like Micro Center.
Dan like Micro Center. You heard it here first. So support Moore's Law is Dead by clicking on the links below and checking out Micro Center today. All right. Now let us move on to story number 3. AMD delays the desktop Ryzen 9000 series. Quoting from Anantech, on July 24th, AMD sent word that the company is delaying the launch of their Ryzen 9000 series desktop processors. The first Zen 5 architecture-based desktop chips were slated to launch, would it be this week, actually, quoting here, on July 31st, but citing quality issues that are significant enough that AMD is pulling back stock already. So distributors, AMD is delaying the launch by 1 to 2 weeks. The Ryzen 9000 launch will now be a staggered launch, with the Ryzen 5 9600X and Ryzen 7 9700X launching on August 8th. Well, the Ryzen 9 9900X and flagship 9950X will launch a week after that on August 15th. So, is this a 3D chess move or an honest mistake or a missed opportunity? Well, assessment of AMD's delays vary. From proclaiming that it is a missed opportunity amongst Intel issues to AMD pushing back the launch to compare against Intel's CPUs that are disadvantaged by some microcode, a lot of theories have been thrown around by pundits lately. But in all honesty, this likely is not a 3D chess move, at least not in my opinion. But the fact that reviewers have not even gotten samples yet, days before the original launch, I think that, and before they pushed it back, that would tell you that there was probably an issue. And it does seem clear, at least to me, that AMD knew they had an issue and tried until the last minute to avoid pushing back the launch, but failed to. And also, I should point out to people, this costs them money to push back a launch, like a lot. Mm-hmm. So it's not like they just go, oh, there's going to be a microcode update, let's push it back. Reviewers didn't have samples, and this would cost them money. So I think there was some issue. What issue is that? Well, there is a chip circulating today with a typo on a CPU that says Ryzen 9 9700X instead of Ryzen 7 9700X. So that could be part of something that caused this. But I'm going to be honest, I haven't talked to anybody about it. I don't have any sources who've consulted with me on this. I don't think it's just that. Personally, I don't think it's just a typo on one batch of CPUs that has made them go, we're going to push back this huge launch. If I had to honestly guess, there was some manufacturing issue that could affect performance of a small percentage. They could have rolled the dice and said it's not a big deal, but they probably said, do we want the 7900 XTX cooler issue again, where like for no reason we had like 100 break at the same day, and then everyone was throwing conspiracy theories around on Reddit on what's wrong. Let's just avoid that. And then maybe they also had a batch with typos, and then maybe they also saw the Intel microcode thing, and they're like, everything is screaming at us that we should delay this launch a few weeks. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I mean, you really don't want that bad reputation that the 7900 XTX still kind of gets brought up every once in a while, because that's might end up losing you more money. Like, I don't know how many people chose to not get a 7900 XTX because they heard that they heard that they run too hot, and they didn't hear the follow-up where one batch just, I think it was
20% of one batch didn't have enough coolant in the vapor chamber.
Yeah, okay. So don't do that again. Intel's currently going through a pretty bad press cycle where a lot of people seem like they're skeptical on if they'd ever buy another Intel product because of how bad this is, and just don't do it. I mean, I think I wish they would have taken their own advice when it comes to the 300 series APUs, though,
Yes.
because they clearly needed a little bit more time.
Yeah,
Now,
all this is just telling us, like, AMD, just like launch everything at the end of August. Like, it doesn't matter.
or maybe it means that the issues for the Ryzen or for these CPUs is more severe than what it was for
Probably.
that. So I don't know. I don't think they want a day one review. We put the CPU in and it just blue screened over and over again, which who knows, maybe it is.
Even if it was just one reviewer, you don't want that.
Yeah.
Because
So
what if it was Gamer's Nexus or Hardware Unboxed?
yeah, I know. So I mean, I'm glad they pulled it back. Like, I'm not going to be buying it anytime soon, I guess. And it's better to have good reviews.
You know, the thing you brought up of there's probably some people that didn't get the XTX, even though it wasn't really a big issue. I don't think there's a lot of people that never did. Like, if they were interested in it and then it dropped to $900 a year later, I think anyone interested would have bought it. What I can tell you for sure is I distinctly remember the first 3 months of the XTX being out. So many people in the Moore's Law said Discord and the YouTube comments were saying, I don't want to get a reference model. And that stopped everyone from getting reference models for months. And I think that's the type of thing you would see with this, is it's just like, you know, a tiny amount would break. Maybe one reviewer would have issues, and then everyone would go, I'm waiting 2 months to buy this. And when you combine that with the fact that, like, the demand really is there, like right now, like that quote I got of like the biggest laptop launch this person's seen at their retail store in their life. I mean, that's probably going to be there for Zen 5 desktop with all these Raptor Lake issues as well. And so it's got to be a great first launch, because you don't want people going, I'm going to wait a month, because they're probably all ready to buy it this month.
Oh yeah, because like I was I was like checking the news of the past couple weeks today to see if, you know, there was anything we should add, and every freaking story up until today was Raptor Lake sucks. Like, and then like from now today onward, everybody is talking about how about the new AI 300 series being good, overall being good. So yeah, I agree. I think people are clamoring to get the next AMD series.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Killing God writes in, says, Tom, could AMD be delaying the launch to fill a few data center orders? No, I don't think so. I mean, if there was something like that, then they could just launch less and say, oh, well, it went out of stock faster and we have more supply coming. And furthermore, I do think I think there's maybe a little too much conspiratorialization going around right now. AMD said there was a quality issue. Why would we think they're lying about that? Like, that doesn't make them look good to say they had a quality issue.
Didn't they need to pull stock from inventory from stores for this issue? Like,
yeah.
I mean, so
yeah, they were already arriving. One of my distributor sources, I held back on doing a launch leak. Well, because I had all that other stuff to do too. But, you know, because I don't know, I think they had to send a bunch back from warehouses.
So I don't think AMD is doing some big brain thing by wasting millions of dollars shipping stuff around the country to convince us that some conspiracy isn't there. And I don't know, Occam's razor, people.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, let's see. Techno writes in, I wager an AMD Wraith Stealth CPU cooler that AMD will delay Zen 5 another 2 weeks, so it is exactly 2 years since Zen 4 was announced on August 29th. Yeah, but I mean, what's the significance? That's when it was announced, not when it came out.
Oh.
I would take that bet, Techno, although there would be no way to prove the motives probably ever. So I think that would be a bet neither of us could ever win.
Well, if we just befriend Lisa Sue and ask her, maybe we'll find out. Or maybe she does, or maybe the conspiracy runs deeper and it's actually,
what did they really talk about?
Some executive.
Yeah.
Not Lisa Sue.
All right. Let us now move on then to story number 4. Until Bartlett Lake leaked, Raptor Lake refresh, oh ho. Quoting here from Tweaktown, Intel is still developing its next-gen Core Ultra 200 series Arrow Lake S desktop CPUs, which will launch on the new LGA 1851 socket later this year. However, the LGA 1700 will live on, and new Bartlett Lake S desktop CPUs reportedly launching in 2025 will be available in hybrid and P-core only offerings. We can expect the hybrid version, so that's the Raptor Lake refresh versions, to launch early January 2025, according to rumors, allegedly. While the P-core only Bartlett Lake S processors will drop sometime in Q3 of 2025. Now, here's editorialization. In the midst of Intel's ongoing meltdown, more on that in the next story, some have grasped onto Bartlett Lake rumors as some possible solution, a light at the end of the tunnel. However, as confirmed by Moore's Law's dead sources in a recent video, that is not what Bartlett Lake is, or certainly not what it was at least planned to be. For now, it is a product line for networking and edge deployments. Furthermore, it consists of hybrid and P-core only variants at first, and that is very likely that the hybrid versions then supposedly launching early will have the same defects as Raptor Lake. Again, one of my sources told me that. And if this was a respin with in-silicon fixes, well then why was Bartlett Lake planned a long time ago for networking? That none of that really lines up. So what is more likely is that it's just Raptor Lake again, or maybe that the hybrid dies are just tested Raptor Lake die bins that they now know won't break. Then if they have found a way to test that, I do wonder that. Those aren't expected to break. And I just want to be clear about this. Like when I asked every Intel source I asked about this last week was like, that's for networking. What are people talking about? So, and furthermore, this was something also confirmed by multiple people. Intel wants to get the hell off of 10 nanometer as soon as possible. It is expensive. It is not good price performance for what you get out of that node. It really isn't very good. It was good for when it was conceived, but then it came out too late. This idea that, this is a rumor I keep seeing. This idea that Intel's looking at AM4 sales and they're like, we need an AM4 competitor. So let's just keep making 10 nanometer
CPUs.
Yeah. Intel's 10 nanometer is not at all cost competitive with what AMD's been using with certainly Zen 3, but I don't even know if Zen 4 when you look at their margins. So really what Intel would want to do is get the hell off of 10 nanometers as soon as possible and push. I mean, they'd be way better off just rebranding, which I'm told they will for some of them, Meteor Lake onto LGA 1851 and making those as cheap as possible, because I've heard that like due to the packaging, Meteor Lake is probably more expensive than Raptor Lake, but I've heard the Intel 4 node it uses for the compute tile is actually probably a cheaper node than 10 nanometer. And guess what? It doesn't break, we think, so far. So, I mean, no, I think they'd be more likely, honestly, to just push Meteor Lake. I don't think they could get it on LGA 1700, but if they could, they'd be better off just doing that to replace Raptor Lake than making more of it.
So I know that like Bartlett Lake was conceived of as a networking CPU, CPUs for networking. But will they likely release the P-core only variants to the DIY market, or is there just not a chance that's happening?
The people I spoke to said they don't even know if it will ever come to consumer. One of them seemed pretty sure it won't, and the other one was like, I don't know. I could see it launching to OEM actually to fill some contracts there, but I don't think anyone should be that excited. And again, it's like Zen 5 and Zen 5 X3D are going to be out by the time the hybrid version of Bartlett Lake is out. So that's not going to be competitive at all. And then the 12 P-core one, which would look, it would be interesting if it launched right now, but it's launching a year from now, late 2025. That's not going to be competitive with anything. We're going to be talking about Zen 6 coming out when that happens. So I don't see how it's competitive with anything. The only thing it would make sense for is they found it's just good for this one use and that they're making it for that.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the only reason I think it possibly could, although, no, wait, never mind. That math adds up. If there's enough like people online hypothesizing that this is the secret sauce that Intel needed all along, I don't know, that I could see it being released just to for those, I don't know, 80 people or something.
Well, yeah, like one or two models, not like some big rollout with a ton of fanfare. No, I think it's networking and edge, and I think what you could also see this be is like for OEMs is like a volume filler if there's incredible demand, because they have all these 10 nanometer nodes. I was talking to someone at IFS the other day about this, and the person goes, I don't know what we're going to do with 10 nanometer capacity. Like we have so many 10 nanometer nodes now, and yet we're building stuff at TSMC with Arrow Lake and Lunar Lake and everything else. You have to go, what are we going to make there? what if, OEMs just sell a lot of systems? Intel's going to go, well, we're still pumping out 10 nanometer. There's not a lot of margin on them, but we have a lot of them. And so if HP needs to sell an extra 10 million chips this year, here they are. They're 10 nanometer, though.
Yeah, I guess. But I mean, like you said, wouldn't they want to eventually retool those facilities, or do they just want
some of them, but that takes a lot of time and money.
Oh, I know it does, but
so that's not happening right away.
And I know you want to have the legacy nodes to some extent, but I mean, if you're not making money off of them, it doesn't make that much sense to keep using them.
Let me look something up too. Confirmed, more 10 nanometer wafers. Yeah, so Intel wasn't making more 10 nanometer wafers than 14 nanometer until I think when Alder Lake came out.
Oh.
Like Alder Lake, so they went through Ice Lake, Tiger Lake, and then it wasn't until they were into Alder Lake production that they were making even the same amount of 10 nanometer as 14. So, yeah, I mean, think about that. That's why, I don't know, maybe they just need to have something to do with those fabs is another thing there, I'd suggest. Deadeyes 117 writes in and says, tinfoil hat time. When Intel announced they were rebranding their processors a while back, everyone was scratching their heads about why they would abandon the name recognition of the I series. However, Intel would probably be the first to know about the stability problems. I don't know if they were, but they should have been in the 13th and 14th gen. Do you think they knew about how big of a problem this would be, and they decided to come up with Core Ultra so it had a different name than the 13th and 14th gen products? Seems to me like they were trying to preemptively distance Arrow Lake from Raptor Lake before the public at large got clued in on the problems. I mean, that is tinfoil hat time. I will say it's not the most implausible theory I've heard, though, but I don't think so. I think they are genuinely surprised by these issues, everybody. From what
I'm trying to remember, when did they Core Ultra branding happen? Was that?
Well, it was Meteor Lake at the end of last year.
Yeah, I know, but when did it first come out that they were planning that?
Oh yeah,
it probably would have been around 6 months before then.
Let me see.
Because I'm just thinking if it was if the Core Ultra branding was pivoting away from the I series because they knew the 1400 series would be bad, you would have expected that to have happened during the 1400 series development.
Because I heard the oxidation thing at least was, I think, March to June of last year. I don't see mentions of Ultra until in the middle of that year. So technically, this does line up with when the oxidation thing happened, probably. So I guess, who knows? But I doubt that. And I want to say this too, people. I mean this genuinely. I don't think they knew about it right away. I think the oxidation thing, that's up for discussion, and they probably did sweep some stuff under the rug. But the ring bus flaw thing, no, I think this actually is surprising Intel, like a lot. And they're terrified. And it's not like, oh, we knew about this and we're ready 5 months ago. But anyways, we're starting to dance around that discussion right now. So let's just get right to it with story number 5. Moore's Law Z leaks the likely culprits of Raptor Lake instability issues, following more leaks, of course, from Gamers Nexus and me months ago. And then Wendell and I think Igor's Labs has a voltage thing that kind of backs up some of the stuff I'm saying. So, but anyways, here, I think I put out a bit, pretty much tied it all together. I'm going to start first by quoting a response from Intel from Tech Radar. Intel provided a statement earlier this week on the instability problems with 14th gen and 13th gen CPUs, but some further details have come to light since then, including a clarification that any damage done to high-end CPUs is permanent. While Intel might be confident that the patch they are working on for August as a preventative issue, the issue of invisible degradation for us is whether potential damage could have been done, which isn't yet detectable. That could be a problem down the line. In other words, while the microcode update may well stop any further damage being caused to the chip, our concern is if some damage has already been done, but nothing that actually has an observable effect, this might, in the long run, mean that the CPU doesn't last as long as it otherwise would have done, which is something I talked about in my leak. But Intel also said it won't be engaging in any kind of recall over the issue. The company hasn't halted chip shipments or sales while the microcode update is being finished off and validated. That's another bad thing, but good point. That microcode patch will roll out via motherboard vendors and BIOS updates next month, as mentioned. And meanwhile, Hannaford confirmed to The Verge that Intel is still investigating possible other causes that may run alongside uncovered key problems with the voltage issue. I think I jumbled up reading it at the beginning there. So just to summarize, Intel's not doing a recall. Their fix doesn't reverse any damage. And there's still evidence that if yours has had, like, say, 20% of the damage done, that you're still probably going to have the chip break eventually. It's just now it will be in 2 years, not in 6 months. And that they clearly seem to think there's other problems that they haven't mentioned yet as well. All right. Meanwhile, yours truly just put out a leak that points to 3 main causes of failure. The first culprit is Intel binning far too many i7s as i9s that cannot handle these high voltages in an attempt to meet demand for the products that actually have a decent margin. Think about how bad Intel's margins have been, especially in client recently, people. And think about the fact that I've been hearing since 13th gen that they've had a really hard time getting enough i9s produced to meet demand. So if those are the ones actually making a profit, you could see them being really pressured to push more samples into the golden sample territory that really aren't golden samples. Now, if you have a golden sample, I probably won't ever break from what I'm hearing from Wendell and other people. There are a decent amount of chips that just never break, but it does need to be a golden sample, not something that was pushed into that tier. Secondly, the leading suspect within Intel, according to MLID sources that I spoke with, is a flaw in the ring bus and how it is fed. Raptor Lake UC shares a single voltage rail for the P cores, E cores, and the ring bus, meaning that if they wanted to get those P cores to hit 6 gigahertz, they had to clock the crap out of the ring bus as well. Also, as Buildzoid observed, Raptor Lake ring bus can go much, much faster than Alder Lakes could. And in addition to that, a source I spoke with said, who didn't work on Raptor Lake but worked on Alder Lake, said, we were really worried that this exact failure could happen in Alder Lake if we pushed voltage too far. So that's enough for me to, I think, confirm that's probably what's going on. Furthermore, a Moore's Law source at Intel Foundries confirmed that there was 100% an oxidation crisis at Intel's Chandler location in Arizona early last year. I was told that a VP of manufacturing even had to come down and decide which wafers to throw away and which to keep. Of course, the source does not know what the decision was. That's above their pay grade. But that did happen, and it did happen in the Arizona plant. So that's a contributing factor. I don't think it was the main failure reason for Raptor Lake because I was told it affected Sapphire Rapids chips as well. I've heard some people say there could have been 20% failure rates at some points with Sapphire Rapids last year, but that they're not really happening anymore, suggesting there they are. There's the oxidation issue for some Sapphire Rapids samples. But if they're not still breaking, this isn't the thing causing everything, I don't think. And in fact, there is a batch number on CPUs, and I believe Intel is obliged to tell you where it was made if you send them it. So if anyone has hundreds of failed Raptor Lake CPUs, take that batch number, send it to Intel, and if they all come back, or almost all of them come back as Arizona fab, that tells you oxidation may be the main culprit. If it's only some of them, then it's not the main culprit. It's just something that clearly happened that affected multiple things. So anyways, now let's go back to Intel's new statement. The most worrying thing about it then for me is that they're saying there won't be a recall. You know, at least CPUs from batches with oxidation issues should be recalled automatically, as Intel already knows that they are substandard products and could probably search for them and send people a message saying this CPU needs to be recalled. It is arguable how many CPUs are affected by the ring bus degradation and instability, but the oxidation issue is a known problem affecting all chips from specific batches, and so there's no excuse not to recall them. And they should have already been recalled as soon as Intel knew about the issue as well, by the way, quite like what AMD is doing with Ryzen 9000. I smell lawsuits.
Yeah. I mean, this is just so bad, and it reeks of a company in crisis. Like, a company that was functioning well would say, oh, the HVAC system in our clean rooms doesn't work.
That's what I was told, that there was some monsoon event in Arizona, which is usually dry. Their HVAC system probably couldn't keep up, and that's what caused it.
Yeah, and if your CPUs are oxidizing while they're being manufactured, that's probably not good. And I don't really even know what else to say. Like, that factory should have been shut down until the HVAC system was fixed.
It was for a week.
Okay.
But you have to remember all these wafers, which I was told each one, like, they literally have a poster up in areas of Intel at the foundry where it says Model X Intel wafer, like reminding you, do not drop them. Do not screw up. You are dropping a Model X in terms of how much it costs. So they shut it down for a week. Well, they looked things over and repaired the HVAC system, but there would have been a lot of stuff made, possibly for like 3 months before they fixed it or something.
Oh, I see. So Okay, so
March, April, May, June, 4 months, maybe 3 to 4 months. And then they also may have even made a decision not to throw some away. I don't know that they did, though. Maybe they did throw them away.
I guess I really can't make a statement. Maybe they did say, well, crap, we need to throw away all of these wafers or something.
But then they still may have made them for months.
Yeah, that because that would probably be the correct response. But yeah, Intel needs these to sell, and they can't do a recall because they can't service all of the RMA clearly because of how much money they would lose on it. So
I don't even know if they have enough chips to do it. I mean,
yeah,
they might not even be able to ship chips. They might just all be doing RMAs instead of selling new CPUs for a couple months.
So this is what they need to do. They're trying their hardest to pretend that this is a microcode issue, and they're going to send out a thing that like a little thing so it doesn't use as much energy, and it probably won't fix it. But hey, maybe you'll get 2 more years out of it, or just enough time to wait to buy Zen 5.
Zen 5 or Zen 6, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Depending on when yours breaks.
Yeah.
No, I think so. And I think that's why they're trying to claim that the laptop chips don't have an issue, even though it's the same frickin' die. Anything affecting the desktop would affect the laptop. And there's plenty of developers that are coming out now and saying, oh, our laptop failures are almost as bad as desktop. They're not quite as bad. And I think Intel's hoping, well, the laptop ones usually run lower voltage, so hopefully they won't break and we don't have to do that. Because that happens, you have to replace all your Alienware and HP. Oh my God, if that happens.
Or they're subtly telling us that there is a separate issue that's affecting Intel laptop CPUs that isn't related to the CPU issue they have on Raptor Lake desktop. Mm-hmm. Like that's the other interpretation of it. I don't know how Intel can continue to pretend that there isn't a further issue. Like, it's obvious. There's multiple reports out about it now that show that they are lying to you, and I don't know. I hope some lawyers are looking to start.
Lawyers want to make money. They're looking. They're calling people.
Maybe there's no smoking gun yet for them, or maybe they're already writing the lawsuit. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and that's something I closed the video on as well, is how absolutely ridiculous and indefensible it is that what's going on right now is we have millions of people probably with CPUs breaking, and their solution is to go and see what Moore's Law is dead said on a Friday night to try to figure out what's wrong, or I think it was a Sunday or something when Windows came out, or the oxidation thing was Gamers Nexus. It's like you have people clinging for anything they can find for a solution, and not just consumers, game devs, people who make use servers, people who work at Intel. Like, I have new Intel sources now, people, because they want to know what's going wrong with their own company, and their own company won't tell them. That's fucked up.
Yeah. I mean, I think I saw that in our editorial board Discord chat. Like, is it Alderon Games now or something? Mm-hmm. Puts a warning. Of them, yeah. Puts a warning when you if you boot your game with an Intel CPU.
Do you know how bad that is for PR? You boot up a game, and if it crashes, and it warns you, first of all, they're like, by the way, your CPU sucks. And then when it crashes, there's a thing that pops up and says, by the way, it's your fault for having an Intel CPU. Don't send us a support ticket. We know what the problem is.
Or, well, yeah, I know. It would be useful to still see all those support tickets, because I'm curious how often they're adding up, and I'm curious like how many of them are from laptops.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and this just keeps going on. I'm on TechSpot right now, and I'm seeing a French retailer apparently says that they have 4 times the RMAs with Intel CPUs that they do with AMD CPUs. I mean, the damage is just done to their brand. I mean, this is, I don't know. I think it's done for do-it-yourself with Intel now. I think AMD could lose to Arrow Lake by 20%. And as long as AMD's 20% cheaper, they'll probably sell fine.
Yeah, I mean, if there's an issue that's baked into the silicon that doesn't show itself for 6 months to a year, like what's happened with this, people just aren't going to trust anything you say. Like because they're not going to trust Arrow Lake is going to work until you prove it. Yeah, so you're basically saying no one will trust if Arrow Lake will work until the next product line is about to come out.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to say this about the microcode thing too. Now, look, it's coming from people in Intel. It's not fully tested yet. Could be wrong. But from what I've heard, it's probably just a single digits performance drop. And it probably does generally work. You know,
Well, yeah,
I've heard it will work, and don't expect like a 20%, 10% drop. Or we'll see, maybe it will be, but they kind of generally expect like more like a 5% at most drop, and for it to do its job. But it's still like, I don't know. It still does mean that your CPU is probably going to break eventually. Or if it has had damage done, like if it's had 6 months of damage, they're still selling them right now. If it's had 6 months of damage done, then that means maybe it won't break in 2 more months, but it'll be in a year. But it still means I think they're going to be dealing with breaks forever, because this is not a permanent fix.
Well, yeah, it's like a repeated use injury. Like every time you do that one thing to your shoulder, it screws it up a little more, and then eventually your shoulder stops working.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I really don't know what else to say. It's kind of sad at this point. And like, I mean, like Wendell said on what we talked about in the last Broken Silicon, the best thing he found is downclocking your RAM to 4,000 mega transfers, and I think he said, I don't remember what he said. And disabling E-cores.
Yeah, disable your E-cores and limit RAM speed, and that should stop the voltage from peaking as much, as kind of what it sounds like to me.
Yeah, so I'm curious how effectively what it's actually going to effectively clock to, because I know they'll cling to saying it goes to 6.2 gigahertz.
Yeah. And the final thing I want to bring up, and this is something one of my sources in retail brought up as well, or actually had a system integrator brought up as well, is that the person goes, do you think anyone updates their BIOS? Like, especially in like an HP laptop? No one upgrades. So unless they can find a way to force this in Windows updates, which, man, that might be a crapshoot. What if Gigabyte's code isn't very good, and then they force it in a Windows update and it borks a bunch of boards? Like, I don't think most people are going to get this update anyways. And I think Intel's going to be dealing with millions. I mean, again, like the write-up said, at a minimum, they should stop sales on the top models for 2 months until it's fixed, so that they don't make the problem worse.
I don't remember. Is there like a way to register your Intel CPU or something when you install it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I mean, I guess if you do that and Intel has your email, they could email you the BIOS update or something. But
yeah,
that's the only way I could.
Well, yeah, but how many people actually have that? I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's the only way I could imagine you could do it on a mass scale, and I doubt most people do that.
And you just got to know that right now Intel's calculating, do we even want to do that? Do we want to have Newegg and Micro Center and Amazon just send out a mass email to everyone and say, if you have an Intel CPU, it's incredibly important you download this because it doesn't work, so that everyone who's bought an Intel CPU gets an email of bad PR? Or are they thinking it might be better if we just let it break?
I don't know. To me, I hear every time an Intel CPU breaks, it's a new person added to the class. So,
yeah, class action lawsuit.
Yeah.
QH Freddy, right? Well, the worst by ones are going to be from OEMs and system integrators. Some that I spoke to,
that's going to be 2 separate lawsuits or something.
It would need to. I think it would need to be. But how mad they would be of like I've said this before, I believe, on the podcast, but I'm saying it again now. Like, think about this, people. If you, especially if it's a mom and pop system integrator, and a lot of them aren't as big as you would think. Like, you say you got a team of 100 people. Let's say you sell, a few hundred desktops a month, and then now you just learned 40% of your desktops are going to be returned. So that's 40% of 300 desktops every month for the next year are going to be returned. Doesn't matter if Intel's like, we'll refund you the CPU. Sorry, here's $500 even. No, because you had to do all these man hours, and you could even damage the brand of these companies.
No, the only way Intel could possibly come close to ameliorating that is they send a technician out to all of those system integrators to do all the work for them, like for free.
Which they're not going to do.
I know.
Now that it's warming up outside, Jessie couldn't be happier to be jumping around every day in the warmer weather. And it's good for me too. Running around with her, teaching her tricks, that's good for my health as well, not just hers. But all of this gallivanting, well, it takes up time and it pressures me to make my lunches quicker to get moving faster with Jesse every weekend afternoon. And usually quick means less healthy. Well, unless you know about Vite Ramen. This piece of content is brought to you by Vite Ramen. Vite Ramen is a healthy, tasty, and shelf-stable food crafted by an American startup that offers a ton of options for eating healthy, like their classic packages that make it easy to add protein and other ingredients of your choice, and then also their Ramen Go packages that offer a healthy microwavable option for those who truly only have a 15-minute lunch break away from home. And I do need to take a second also to remind everyone that they don't just make ramen. They also have Nano Boost Vitality Powder that I honestly think blows away the health powder competition. I literally drink this any night a broken silicon is recorded extra late instead of coffee. And they also have a collection of silverware and accessories that are always high quality. Like the Goofy Girl DM Nakiri knife, I tried it out. It is insanely sharp. It is probably the nicest knife this household owns. So not just the ramen, although the ramen's great. Everything else on there is high quality, and that's why I've been working with Vite Ramen for so long. I actually like their products, all of their products, a lot. I've never tried something they made that wasn't good, so check them out. And remember that even just clicking on the link in the description helps the channel a ton, and buying some of the special packs through that link helps you save money and support the channel even more. So support Moore's Law Z by checking out Vite Ramen today. QH Freddy writes in and says, if Intel is going to have to replace hundreds of thousands, if not millions of Raptor Lake chips with a new stepping, are we going to see another episode of supply constraints like Intel had with 14 nanometer with the MDS Spectre episodes on Skylake X servers? Maybe. I mean, if that happened where the Sapphire Rapids thing was more than just a certain amount, like a lot of them, and the thing you got to worry about is what if this happened multiple times? I don't know. Then, yeah, I think that could cause some shortages there. The thing is, though, I think AMD knows how to help. AMD is actually preparing to help Intel with their shortages by pricing Zen 5 super low, so they don't even sell that many more anyways, because I think AMD sees the opening here, and they're like, if we can provide the volume, everyone will switch.
Oh, I mean, honestly, I don't think things could have worked out better for AMD's CPU. Like, this scandal happening right before their launch is huge. I mean, it would have been better if it came out on like Tuesday. Then they could have really capitalized off of it. But I don't think people have the memory of a goldfish, so I think they'll be a lot more interested in getting AMD CPUs.
Well, yeah, this problem's not going to be gone by then. Techno writes in, do you think Intel will have enough Arrow Lake CPUs by mid to late 2025 when they officially recall Raptor Lake? Well, I don't think they're going to recall Raptor Lake, or at least we don't know if they will yet.
Unless the I can't remember what organization does it, compels them to recall it, right. They'll probably do it.
And offer everyone a free or low-cost upgrade to Arrow Lake of their choice. Yeah, I don't know. I continue to think that what Intel's going to need to do is figure out a swap program. Like, that's the best thing they can do if they're not going to do a recall. Like, they need to have a thing where they get a version of Meteor Lake working on LGA 1700 or something, some version, and they just go, or these, like, we'll talk about it later, these new, P-core only models that are coming out with no E-cores. Interesting timing from Intel right now. You've got to wonder if what they'll do is they'll have like 3 buckets. They're just like, here's the Arrow Lake option. Here's the Meteor Lake LG 1700 option, if that is a thing, probably not. And then here's the P-core only option. And they go, all right, so you've sent us a 14900K and it broke. So here's what we're going to do. We can offer you an Arrow Lake i7, but you would need a new motherboard, but it costs more, so it is kind of a free upgrade. Or we'll offer you this P-core only one that is technically no E-cores, but we know it won't have the problem. If you have an i7, we'll offer you the P-core only i9. Technically, it's an i9 from an i7, or you can get an i5 Arrow Lake. I think they're just going to have a system by which you can choose what they give you back, because these don't work.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, that or the only other system is like you said, like a super beefed up RMA system, which that's not going to solve the problem completely. I mean, because system integrators aren't going to want to deal with that. DIYers aren't going to want to deal with that. Like, yeah, and you can't fix a broken silicon. But yeah, I mean, that seems like the best option to me. That is the best to get them away from being sued. Like, I don't know.
But it's still going to happen. It's a litigious world we
Yes.
live in. I mean, they're still going to get sued. I'm sorry. Alpha Space writes in and says, with the stability and degradation issues we see with 13th and 14th gen right now, what do you think could be the implications for Intel foundries if it is caused by an unfixable hardware issue? Could this also mean that Intel may be really lucky to be using TSMC for Arrow Lake? No, I don't think it makes a difference because, again, I brought it up a few minutes ago. What I heard is that this was kind of like a black swan event where some monsoon storm went through Arizona, I believe, is what the person said. And usually, of course, very dry in Arizona. Their HVAC system couldn't catch up. Then they fixed it. They did fix the issue. I don't think it's like still happening. So I don't think that affects Arrow Lake because this issue would have been fixed before they made Arrow Lake. I don't even know if they have I don't even know what nodes they would have at that foundry by the time Arrow Lake launches, too. So, no, it wouldn't affect that. But what I do think it could affect, especially if there's a lot of Sapphire Rapids failures that start happening, I do think what could happen here, though, is no one's going to want to use Pat's foundries for years. Like, you bet. And that's why I think the oxidation issue is in many ways overplayed for how big of it is for consumers. Guys, it was like a few months. It's over. It'll go away from that, I believe. That's from what and again, prove me wrong. Look up the batch numbers. Prove me wrong. Then you can do it, someone. But at the same time, I think people are underplaying how bad that would be for Intel foundries if there's a lawsuit about them not telling their partners about a failure.
Yeah, because and just, I mean, as a person that's looking to manufacture on something, you see Intel have this failure, or then you see TSMC, they have an earthquake, and then like the next week they're already up and running again.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And they'll tell you what happened, which lines were affected. Like the fact that they didn't tell you I saw some people on, I think it was Alderon Games on Reddit saying, wait, there was an oxidation issue? You didn't tell us that and you denied RMAs.
Yeah, that's crap.
So, I mean, that's where, I guess, to put a pin in this conversation here, this is one of the points I considered ending the video I put out on Friday on, but I didn't. I ended it on something else. But I'll say it now, this spiel. Like, at the end of the day, what really caused Raptor Lake issues? Intel rushing it out way too fast. They didn't validate it enough. They put it in production. I was told they just rushed it right into the fabs. It just showed up out of nowhere. It was this insistence on rushing and not taking second place. Like, be willing to just run the thing at 5.5 gigahertz Intel and lose to Zen 4 by 3%. Like, who cares? But they insist on, they don't know how to be number two, and they insisted on rushing something out that clearly wasn't ready or was clearly done too quickly and too carelessly. And if we're thinking about all these issues, whether it's binning the wrong chips, too much voltage, missing a flaw, oxidation stuff they missed, it's just the carelessness and the rushed nature of this. And there's just something wrong with the management at Intel. There's something wrong.
Yeah, the fact that they're still committed to the whole KS bit every year shows that, like, they just have the opposite of that philosophy. Like, the 9900 KS, when it came out, I always thought the KSs were kind of stupid, but at least the 9900 KS did what it was supposed to do.
It was the best samples.
Yes. You know. And it wasn't made irresponsibly like the 13900K, just the K now, and 14900Ks are.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't really have much else to say about this story here, so I suppose we can just move on to story number 6. PS5 Pro update. Quoting from PressStart, then Insider Gaming. It's been a while since we've heard much of the PS5 Pro in the rumor mill, but thanks to data miners plumbing the depths of a recent update to No Man's Sky, one of our first looks at a potential PS5 Pro update to the game has been unearthed. The discovery comes via game developer and modder That Bomber Boy on X, who posted screenshots comparing the baked-in graphical and performance presets for No Man's Sky on the regular PS5 versus a new list of settings included in the update under the name Trinity, which is widely believed to be the code name for the PS5 Pro. Yeah, I believe that was on the documents I leaked. Insider Gaming goes on and says, documents sent to this person in mid-2023 show that the PlayStation 5 Pro release date, which, if memory serves correctly, was in the latter half of November 2024. Despite the Pro seemingly being on track, several sources have been apprehensive about the console's release date for when it is coming out later this year. primarily due to the limited number of first-party games that will use its features. However, regarding documentation, 90 to 95% of my reporting involves document sources. Nothing implies that the PS5 Pro has been delayed or canceled. So in all honesty, not much new information has emerged since Moore's Law said exclusively leaked PS5 Pro specs and PSSR details. But the lack of new news has been making a lot of people online, at least that I've noticed, wonder what's going on. Well, now we have a game update directly mentioning and preparing for the Pro console. It is coming out. It has not been canceled. You see those rumors pop up. It is not canceled, people. And more interestingly, an update from Tom Henderson. Well, some of his sources aren't sure about the Pro's release date this year. That is due to the limited game support. It seems Sony is in a holding pattern, waiting for more games to get ready to ship as with PS5 Pro upgrades. Per Henderson, starting on July 30th, Sony will begin certification of PS5 Pro game versions. I bet we can expect more leaks than in a week. And all games released after September 15th will be required to support PS5 Pro with upgraded settings. From this, then, we can only say two things for certain. The PS5 Pro is technically ready now and will eventually come out, number one. And number two, it will not launch before September 15th.
I mean, yeah, if they could do a press conference in like August and say it's coming out in October or November or something.
Yeah, that's what it kind of... November sounds pretty likely to me at this point. Yeah, I think someone told me that that's where they thought it was going to come out too.
I mean, that's when they... that's Sony's
that's
last
typically
3 releases?
When they do it. Yeah,
so Sony likes to launch their consoles in November. It makes sense. I mean, a month before Christmas is the exact right time to launch a game console. So yeah, I mean, that all seems pretty believable to me. And my only thought on why people might be speculating that it's canceled was, well, you need to keep the rumor mill going, I suppose. And
it is silly season. I've always been told that July through August is silly season for leaks.
And to me, what I see is the leaks probably set people's expectations that this was about to be announced, and Sony probably didn't want to announce it until around now or a month from now or something.
Well, it is worth pointing out, though, that from what I've been told, this thing's been done for like a year. I mean,
yeah, I know.
And that made headlines. And I think I said that to, I don't know if it was Ancient Gameplays or who, early in the year, one of my first podcasts. It's like, no, like I'm told the thing was like done, validated. This thing arguably could have come out late last year. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were surprised that it didn't. But, I don't think they feel rushed by Xbox right now. And it seems like they're having, I don't know if trouble, but like they're realizing that like validating all of the games is going to take some time, longer than they wanted.
Yeah.
So at least that's what Tom Anderson says. I don't know. Kenahoon25 writes in and says, hey, Tom and Dan, what do you think Sony has to do to make the PS5 Pro an actual option for a gamer to buy? Seems a lot of PS4 users refuse to upgrade. They've been widely available for the past 2 years. Yeah, I'll just skip ahead and say this. I used to be $500, man.
Yeah.
I mean, the PS5 Pro needs to be $500. And frankly, I think the base model, it doesn't even come with a disc drive. It needs to be $350.
Yeah, I mean, if they started selling the base model for $350, I think a lot of people that are insisting on staying on the PS4 would go for it. And I think the PS5 Pro is mostly people that just buy every Sony console, if I'm being honest. I don't think... Maybe there's some people that are like, oh, I didn't think it was a big enough upgrade to go from the PS4. But I don't think there's many people that are jumping from the PS4 to the PS5 Pro.
Yeah, and I'm looking as of a reporting on July 8th of this year. I know we talked about slowing console sales, and they are. But it must be noted that the PS5 is still outselling the PS4 by 8% in aligned sales to this month. Mm-hmm. So, yes, our PS5 sales slowing down. Sure, it is still outselling the PS4. But I will say, I get the feeling that the momentum is going to fall behind the PS4 if they don't do this. 500, 350, or maybe even 300. Why not? You make money on the sales of the games. You're not even including a disc drive. If you could afford to sell a digital-only PS5 at launch for 400, I find it hard to believe, you couldn't do it for like 300 now. I just find that hard to believe. So that's what I think Sony needs to do, is be like, this one's 300, this one's twice as strong in 500. And if you want a disc drive, you can buy that separately. And I think that will finally get the PS4 people to go, all right, that's what I paid for a PS4. Now I'll pay that much for this. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that is all of the main stories. Let us now move on to the wrap up. These are the stories that we thought were worth mentioning, but probably not worth getting their own 10 to 20 minute discussion. So the PSVR2 Steam app is a thing 2 weeks before PC support rolls out. So I don't know. I think that's interesting that they have their own app for PSVR2. We've been talking. I remember there's like a whole year we were talking about, is it going to come to PC? It's here, you know?
Well, given that it seems like they're running down support, starting to pull support from PSVR. Hopefully, I can get one of these for cheap at some point.
Yeah, I do think there's a thing here where you can definitely interpret the move Sony is making to be, we're done caring about this product, but now it's on PC, so you can still buy it and use it with anything there. So goodbye, everybody. Mm-hmm. Which is disappointing, but it is weird. I mean, we've seen VR sales kind of fall apart across the board. So it's like, now I don't know if it's a Sony problem, although I think they could have done it better, actually. It's just so funny how much hype there was about VR. All VR stocks went to the moon, and then sales went down after the stock market hype went away. And it's like, I think we talked about this were they buying VR because it was hyped up on CNBC or something? Like, what's going on?
I don't know. I mean, my feeling on VR has always been it's cool, but there's just not enough there for me to want to get it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Samsung HBM3 certified by Nvidia. The reason Carbon Cry tells me this is important to note is because Nvidia has only used SK Hynix HBM until now. And so this is actually kind of a huge deal in alleviating some shortages for the AI boom.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So I just thought that was worth mentioning, or he did. Askar writes in and says, it is said that all of HBM3 and HBM3E capacity has been sold out through 2024 and 2025 already. And then NVIDIA and AMD are taking the most of that supply. Do you have any idea of the proportion of HBM supply those two purchased each and a percentage of each? No. And how can others like Amazon and Google manufacture homegrown AI ASICs if they don't get enough HBM? They can't. I mean, I think that's, and I just, again, we bring this up. I feel like it comes up every few episodes, HBM and some sort. And it's like, yeah, this is not coming to gaming GPUs for 5 years or something ever again, if it ever does. It seems gone to me. RTX 3050A launched a laptop 3050 that technically uses 80-106. And so it's also a 4 gigabyte card. Let me see this. Oh, and so it's 64-bit. Oh, so they're using Lovelace to make a laptop 3050, and then they're only giving it a 64-bit bus so that it's the same performance. This almost feels like a new MX card to me.
Yeah, this thing is weird, and I just hate why call this a 3050 NVIDIA. Just
call it a 4040.
Yeah, 4040 or...
They already have 4050 on laptop.
Oh, yeah, they do. Yeah, so call it a 4040.
Or an MX 670, I don't know, or 650.
Yeah, whatever. Just stop confusing what your things are. Even if this is better than the 3050 laptop, I don't know if it is. But
also, I'm just going to say it again. When the 6500 XT came out, it was like, you can't buy anything else. This is the only reason you get this because it's better than a 1650. But that was what, 2022? Early 2022? Yeah. Guys, we're in 2024, 4 gigabytes. It pretty much wasn't enough back then for almost anything. Now it really isn't. In fact, I want to pull out the latest benchmarking I've done because I've been looking at some new mini PCs. And I just want to point out to people that in my test team, let's see here, a 6500 XT 4 gigabyte is, let me see here, barely stronger than Hawkpoint in some titles. But if it's the 8 gigabyte version, it is almost, let's see here, it is over double the performance. That is how much it matters to give the 64-bit 6500 XT 8 gigabytes. You're looking at wildly higher performance. And so everything needs more than 4 gigabytes now, people. Let's see. NVIDIA moves to open source drivers on Linux. Let's see. Lucimon writes in about this and says, might this be the groundwork to get NVIDIA into Steam Deck-like devices? Maybe. I
Oh,
mean, we've
yeah.
heard about them working on handhelds. Will it just be the rumored NVIDIA MediaTek SoC, or do you see them making a dedicated GPU with low enough power draw to make sense for handhelds? I think NVIDIA wants to get into... They want a handheld.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. They tried to do it with the Shield years ago.
Well, and if you look at Windows on ARM, I mean, there's a chance they're thinking, the same thing AMD is. Like AMD's Soundwave APU is supposed to come out like 2026, 2027. Maybe by then, ARM on Windows will work better.
Mm-hmm.
And you could see that AMD launching a big APU then. But you could also see NVIDIA launching laptop APUs then as well. So I think whether it's the Steam Deck or Windows on ARM, NVIDIA is just laying the groundwork for going for it again, and not in a silly way, in my opinion, like the Shield, just actually making something that can compete with AMD and Intel in laptops and handhelds. So we brought this up a few times. Intel launches the Raptor Lake with disabled E-cores generation. This could have been a main story in a really slow week, but I don't think it really makes sense to go through the whole thing. Their names are really, really weird. I don't know if you've seen them, Dan. They're like 14901 KE, I believe it is, or something odd like that.
Well, okay, Intel. Let's see if you've just launched a bunch of other products that also break.
Well, they have the E-cores disabled. I
know they do, so they shouldn't. I guess, but it's like this is an admission that you failed at whatever you were trying to do with this. I don't know. This is just
with like E-cores.
Yeah,
there's a lot of people that would suggest that.
And it's an admission that your products don't work.
Yeah, I mean, I do have to wonder if they are finding out how they can maybe diagnose a CPU for degradation, and then they're just disabling the E-cores out of the gate and selling these now. You do have to wonder if that's what's going on, or if some ARM-made CPUs, they disable the E-cores, they still work. They're just repackaging these too. Who knows? But I don't know. It is odd timing, isn't it?
Very.
Jensen Wang, CEO and AI Master, writes in and says, why is the best naming scheme for Intel CPUs without efficiency cores to add an E at the end of their existing name? And why did they put a 1 at the end?
Nobody knows.
I don't know. I don't know. It's a good point. Like, you would think it's like this has E at the end. It doesn't have E cores. I don't know. I'm guessing the 1 is just because they don't want the same number. But no, they have 14900 without a K. So no, I don't know.
And also, if you're trying to tell us that now that 24 cores is what an i9 is, it seems weird to release one with 8, right? Just 8?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I feel like
I would argue that should be called an i7. Yeah, me too. Thalo215 writes in and says, with the release of the P-core only CPUs, how funny would it be if it turns out to be vastly faster than the hybrid design, like to the point where it makes the last few years of these hybrid chips look like a waste of money? The investors would shit bricks. Well, 12 cores, it won't in multi-threading. I'm assuming, you mean the Bartlett, like 24 thread, only P-core one. No, multi-threading, I don't think it will match the 14900 KS. However, it would be interesting in mixed threading if it did, though, because you could see a situation where like Adobe's a mixed threaded one. Yeah,
I could see that being better.
Yeah. I don't know. I think there'd be a lot of people who would say, what are the point of E-cores? Jensen Wang, CEO and AI Master, writes in yet again and says, with Intel's Raptor Lake snafu going on, could this and Qualcomm losing exclusivity for Windows on ARM actually lead to ARM being 20% of Windows client computers? Well, I can tell you it will, for a fact it will not soon, because I'm told they only made 4 million APUs this year for the X Elite. So no,
so they
literally they can't.
Huge sales then.
No. And again, which is also why I think they wanted to rush it out early, because they were like, we didn't even make that many. We have to launch them before Strix. But anyways, I do also hear that Qualcomm's working on a new push for lower cost CPUs, and that, speaking on some consulting calls, like all of their metrics show that people don't hate Qualcomm. They just don't think it should cost that much. So look, if they can improve the software and the compatibility on Windows, and then they can launch X Elite products for $700 laptops, $800 laptops right before Christmas, I don't know. I think there's a world where they start taking some market share from Intel here. I really do.
Oh, I mean, I 100% agree. Like, what did they say their ambition was? 50% of Qualcomm? I don't remember if they said 50%.
It was something ridiculous. It's like in a few years, we'll have 50% of the market. It's like, no.
Will that be the case? No, but I bet there's going to be other companies that develop their own CPUs that don't have an I bet there's going to be some ARM CPUs that come to the market within the next few years. And yeah, if Intel can't claw back their reputation, that's where that's the new competitor in the market then.
Mm-hmm. All right. Final one. Big Jeff B writes in and says, random question for Tom. I'm pretty sure he won't be able to answer till the week after, but did you get to the AEW Blood and Guts for the double ring steel cage match at the Bridgestone Arena in Nashville? It happened on Wednesday, July 24th. No, but I did look it up, and honestly, it probably would have been fun to go to with some friends.
What is this?
It's just a big wrestling cage match, I believe.
I assume... Okay. Oh, okay. So it's a professional wrestling event. Does look fun.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, that's always been something where I'm like, I'm not into wrestling at all, but getting some beers with the boys and going to something like that.
And then
especially if you're close to the ring.
Yeah, and then just watching the stupidity ensue would be very fun.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of Broken Silicon. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please remember to like it. Please remember to share. Sharing our content helps so much. And please remember to comment below and subscribe to the Moore's Law is Dead YouTube channel. Subscribing does help us on the algorithm. It does help make it easier for us to reach out to more guests. And honestly, the bigger this channel gets, the more sources reach out to this channel. So subscribing helps a ton as well. And also consider supporting us on Patreon. The amount of work that goes into one of those exhaustive stories where I called up people at Intel Foundries and multiple other locations at Intel and their partners, that's like a ton of work. It wasn't just work by me. There's a whole team of people that are helping as well that this channel pays to be part of this team that makes this all possible. So please, if you have even just $2 a month, support us on Patreon as well. And then, I don't know. I guess that's pretty much it, Dan. Any final words?
I don't think so. No.
Goodbye.
Bye.
This podcast was brought to you by the YouTube channel and website Moore's Law is Dead. Moore's Law is Dead and Broken Silicon are trademarks of their creator, Tom. That guy is me, and I am indeed the creator, editor, writer, and showrunner of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, videos, articles, and other media. However, it's not just me. Moore's Law is Dead is a team, with Broken Silicon co-hosted by my brother Dan, audio editing by Gerard Cortez, renders being done by the industrial designer Jean-Philippe Clermont, and special assistance is also provided by Carmen Cry and Carrie No Sugad as well. Find all of our information at www.mooreslawsdead.com on the About/Support page. In the event you do want to hire me for consulting work, hire Gerard for audio work, hire Jean-Philippe for industrial design work, or you're interested in working with Carbon Cry or Carrie No Sugata as well. You can also find our long-term sponsors on that page if you want to show them some love for putting food on our tables. Or you can also mail us some love. You can send letters or hardware donations to the following address: Moore's Law is Dead, P.O. Box 60632 in Nashville, Tennessee, zip code 37206. Although, to be honest, the best way to show Moore's Law is Dead some love is to support us on Patreon. Patrons are what makes Moore's Law is Dead content truly possible. Every month, and really every day, depending on who you're talking about, me, Gerard, Dan, and Jean-Philippe are working tirelessly to provide a steady stream of content that we could not keep doing unless we knew the work was possible without being reliant on sponsors dictating every little thing we put out. Don't get us wrong. We love our sponsors, but we love directly working for you, our fans, much more. If you have any extra money, even a couple free dollars a month, consider supporting us directly on Patreon. Those couple of monthly dollars will get you access to the exclusive podcast Die Shrink, voting on subjects of future podcast episodes, the ability to ask guests questions, and of course, access to the Moore's Law is Dead Discord full of like-minded people who I am sure would love to meet you. I am one of them. Additionally, higher tiers get access to early, ad-free episodes of Broken Silicon, the ability to ask questions in all Broken Silicon episodes and Loose Ends live streams ahead of the recording, and the entire back catalog of Moore's Law is Dead podcasts, in addition to having thanks in the credits of videos and podcasts depending on the tier, with other perks available as well. And hey, If you cannot afford to support us directly every month, please do share Moore's Law is Dead videos and podcasts with friends and family, and on social media and websites like Reddit, and give Broken Silicon a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast app of choice. All of this does really help us so much. But like I said, this podcast would not be possible without the patrons directly providing predictable and reliable support every month. And so now it is time to give a personal thanks to the greatest of the fans. The following supporters are at the 10 gigahertz or higher supported levels: Brad Medlin, Drita Foles, Z Jits, Daniel D, Aaron Close, Jen Rauner, Deke, Nicholas Buckner, Daniel Hyde, GZ Ziggy, MJB1, SNES Chalmers, Jem Ferriero, Valcom Alev, Jensen Wang, Gregorius Akersar, Castro, Chris Rich, Toka, Crimpress AI Blocks, 3DS Boy 08, Hal Booma, Shredbird, Holden Mobley, Sammy Malas, Jordan Simkovic, Julian Leak, Jonathan, The Boss Haas, Franco Frederic, Jake Dude 23, Jake Martin, Zlicky, Christopher A. Butler, Chrysantine, Stefan Hart, Meat and Pork, Tim Robb, Ian Clifford, Travis Gooding, Neith Rizink, Mads, Zootsuit Taylor, Stephen Coates, Greg, Michael McGee, Patty Cakes, Gamers Unite, Amiable Chief, Mark Mitchell, Tommy, Ishad, Mark Raidmaker, James Anderson, Cole Addict, Cameron, Henry Zhang, Wesley Sager, D31337 Antics, Michelle Pell, Hexa Puma, Jamie Witters, Reginald Ari, Teak Autumn, Jeff Sedler, Loophole 35, Winstar, Corey Leonard, James I. Raider, JSMMH, Little Germany, Mai Sharona, Shay, Milton, Post Media, Melodic Warrior, Brett Jones, Chuck Glidden, McDaffie, Stephen Dick, Dave Schultz, Ostrid Haggerty, Justin Bussell, Winwang, Joe Foot, Brian Scanlon, Hardlin, Slushbot, Jansen Angema, Joseph Kelly, Himsa Gung, Tails 2299, Neil Valverga, John Sisyphos 7771, The Forbidden Juice, RB Racer, Brian Wright, AC, Alex Vega, Dr. J Mad, Free D, Michael Cozy, John Swin, Crystal Joe, Elber Gunn, Jola Martina, Kikum Solarized 80, Jeffrey Gentleman, Matthew Marlowe, Thalo 215, Lord Starstream, Gian Violi, Time Unveiled, Hudat 42, Cornster 671, Penta Winto, Rowan McKickey, Sprutnik, Angel of Cake, John Wick Boomstick, Omega Doge, Mr. Tiger, Porcelain Oats, Corey, Curry King 3, Nick, Sismania, Sakosha, and of course, thank you to Sahara for the music.